Imagine waking up to find that you can't walk, you can't talk, and you don't recognize your own family. All because your own government treated you as an expendable tool. The goal was simple, yet terrifying. Total control of the human psyche. Welcome to the chilling true story of Project MKUltra. In the early 1950s, a specific fear began to dominate the American intelligence community: the total loss of mental autonomy. U.S. officials were convinced that foreign adversaries had developed techniques to break the human will, potentially creating operatives who could be programmed to commit acts of sabotage. The Korean War intensified this panic. Intelligence reports detailing the treatment of captured American soldiers suggested that communist forces were using sophisticated psychological conditioning to extract confessions and alter the loyalties of POWs. CIA Director Allen Dulles viewed the human mind as the next great battlefield of the Cold War. He warned that the United States was falling behind in what he called a sinister battle for men's minds. To fight this battle, the CIA required scientific data they didn't have. They needed to understand the mechanics of the brain, and more importantly, they needed human subjects to test their theories. Targets who were often unaware of their role in the research. This perceived existential threat provided the CIA with a justification to move beyond its legal charter. In the name of national security, the agency began preparing for a program that would ignore domestic laws and basic medical ethics. The man chosen to lead this effort was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, the agency's poisoner-in-chief. Despite his role in developing lethal potions and overseeing torture, Gottlieb lived an eccentric, quiet life in a cabin without electricity, spending his mornings milking goats and his evenings practicing speech therapy. This declassified memo shows the formal activation of Project MKUltra in April 1953. Under Gottlieb's direction, the agency began focusing on Sub-Project 8, a massive study into the neurophysiological and psychiatric effects of LSD. Gottlieb was handed unprecedented bureaucratic power to achieve his goals. He was granted 6% of the entire CIA operating budget, and he was allowed to spend it without standard fiscal accounting or any external oversight. The mandate was to identify a chemical means of crushing the human psyche until it would admit anything. This order signaled the start of a decades-long program of clandestine human experimentation across North America. Project MKUltra functioned as an umbrella for 149 sub-projects. The program reached into 80 domestic institutions, using front organizations to funnel money into universities, hospitals, and prisons, while keeping the CIA's involvement hidden from the researchers. One of Gottlieb's first moves was an attempt to corner the market on hallucinogens. He arranged for the CIA to spend $240,000, nearly $4 million today, to purchase the world's entire supply of LSD from Sandoz Laboratories. The testing began within the agency itself. In 1953, Army scientist Frank Olson was secretly dosed with LSD at a retreat. Days later, suffering from a severe psychological breakdown, Olson would plunge to his death from a hotel window in New York City. The program soon moved into the public sphere. Under Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA established safe houses in New York and San Francisco, where unsuspecting citizens were drugged with LSD and observed through one-way mirrors to see how they would react in social settings. These operations repurposed city apartments and private retreats into clandestine research sites. For the CIA, the chemical data gathered from these experiments was considered more valuable than the safety or the consent of the people being tested. One of the most severe chapters of the program took place at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. Here, Dr. Ewan Cameron led Sub-Project 68, using CIA funds to explore how to effectively break and rebuild a human personality. Cameron's techniques focused on psychic driving and deep patterning. The theory was that if you could wipe a patient's mind clean through trauma, you could then reprogram their behavior using repetitive messages. Patients were placed in medically induced comas for weeks and subjected to high-voltage electroshock therapy far beyond standard clinical levels. While unconscious or drugged, they were forced to listen to repetitive audio loops for up to 16 hours a day, sometimes for weeks at a time. The human toll was catastrophic. Rather than being cured, patients were reduced to a state of childlike dependence. Many lost the ability to speak, walk, or recognize their own families, suffering permanent psychological damage that lasted the rest of their lives. By the early 1970s, Gottlieb admitted the program was a scientific failure. Millions of dollars had been spent and countless lives had been ruined, yet the CIA was no closer to reliably controlling human behavior. The drugs were simply too unpredictable for operational use. In 1973, as internal investigations began to threaten the agency, CIA Director Richard Helms issued a final directive. Every record related to MKUltra was to be destroyed. He intended to erase the program's history before the public could learn of its existence. The agency believed that by shredding the files, the architects of these experiments could walk away. They assumed that without a paper trail, there would be no way to hold the government accountable for 20 years of illegal human experimentation. This 1977 transcript exists because the CIA's purge was incomplete. Investigators discovered misfiled financial records, providing a roadmap to the buried program. The Church and Rockefeller commissions forced it into the light, revealing the scale of the CIA's domestic activities and psychological torture. Sidney Gottlieb was eventually forced to testify. Under oath, the agency's top chemist had to answer for the ruined lives of the subjects he had treated as expendable tools for statecraft. For the survivors, the path to justice was nearly impossible. Families of those ruined by Dr. Cameron and Frank Olson spent decades fighting legal battles against a government that used every available resource to avoid accepting liability for the damage it had caused. The exposure of these activities forced a restructuring of government oversight. It provided the foundation for the standardized bioethical codes used in modern research, ensuring that no federal agency could ever again claim that national security outweighed the requirement for human consent. In response to the fallout, President Gerald Ford issued an executive order requiring informed written consent for all human experimentation. These protections were later expanded by Presidents Carter and Reagan to cover all categories of federally funded research. MKUltra remains a stark historical lesson on the dangers of institutional secrecy. It is a reminder that when the state operates in the shadows, its own citizens often become the collateral damage of its ambitions.